Hey, let's start the program.
For Friday, September 23rd, iPhone launch day. Welcome to This Is Only a Test, the official podcast of Tested.com. Hello, and welcome to a slightly delayed podcast this week. Delayed for many reasons, none of them good, but we are getting an episode out anyway for y'all this week. I'm Norm, and I am joined by Kishore Hari for another duo cast. We're ping ponging back and forth. I don't think you've seen Jeremy for like a month, Kishore.
You haven't seen us in the same place for a long time. Maybe we're just the same person.
Oh, that would be a Zoom feature that I'd like to see. But you were gone last week, of course, with some family travel. Welcome back. Hope you're well rested from your travels. It's good to see you. If you want to relay a message to Jeremy, let me know, and we'll play the game of telephone. I can tell him next week, and then month by month,
Actually,
week by week.
actually, I will say this. I listened to last week's episode, and when he's extolling the virtues of iPad Mini, I was like, come on, really? Is it that good? Oh, I think Jeremy was vindicated this week.
he somewhat. I still can't get on board with his it's not his fault that Apple charges $150 for the storage upgrade from 64 gigs to 256. At least it's not 64 to 128. But I get where he's coming from, and the reviews are out on all those new iOS devices. As I started the podcast, this is iOS 15 slash iPhone 13 slash iPad mini Gen 4, 5 launch day, whatever you want to call it. It's a day to celebrate consumerism, tech consumerism, or not. But we'll get into all that tech stuff. But I think the big story this week, and one of the reasons I'm glad that you're available, Kishore, is Inspiration 4 both launched and landed. Their mission is, at least the SpaceX, the orbit the Earth 3 times or for 3 days portion of their mission, not the fundraising part nor the documentary part of the mission, but they're back on Earth safely. And I want to get your thoughts on what you saw of it, what you thought about it, how you thought it was covered, and how did it compare to the previous missions that we've seen out of SpaceX and other companies.
Yeah, so I mean, Inspiration 4 is the first mission where private citizens have orbited the Earth, which is the difference between that and what happened with Virgin Galactic and Blue Origin. And I watched it. It was meaningful because again, we saw people orbit the Earth, which I think is always more spectacular, I will say. I didn't feel the same as watching like any of the Mars missions or previous space missions sponsored by NASA and whatnot. I did appreciate the St. Jude component of this, and that one of the people on board was a healthcare worker and a cancer survivor, and um, there was something. We live in a time full of cynicism, and it was a moment to kind of put that aside for a second. And by a second, I mean literally 1 second, because the other person on board was selected through like a Shark Tank who could best use like Shift 4's commerce payment system
Oh boy.
properly. I mean, they all went through some form of training, so it wasn't like they were, prepared for this flight. Like there's something even though I fully respect the St. Jude component of this and the fundraising that's going on and the achievement of it, of private citizens orbiting the Earth, it left me wanting in a lot of ways, because of there was a lot of like pomp and circumstance with like the produced TV show that I felt like isn't wasn't earned. Um
Well, we don't know yet, right? And I think that was
Yeah.
probably the most interesting thing about this launch. I think you're right. The launch, in many ways, was both remarkable and routine. I think if you
Mhm.
compare it to even SpaceX launches, we got much more hype, not just in terms of firsts, but the first barge landing, the first trip to ISS. There are many firsts to come, but the being the first group of privately paid a full crew of privately paid for individuals not associated with any government to make it up there and spend multiple days in Dragon capsule, not to go to ISS. That was an interesting first. But at the same time, you know watching the YouTube stream of it, it did feel routine, and I think that was there's it's not like there wasn't any
Yeah.
tension and excitement of watching the countdown and watching all the different stages, and also the landing, the barge landing, like that all still felt exciting. But I like how, I mean, I think SpaceX has really accomplished that goal of making these launches happen at a rate that's far more common than we had been expecting in the past decade.
Yeah. And I think that should absolutely be celebrated. The fact that it's a little boring at points because they're like, "Oh, I've seen this before and it's working perfectly," should absolutely be celebrated. That is a huge achievement. And like you said, I think the biggest thing is the frequency of launches is actually the thing that is the most spectacular. So I want to see more of these. That should absolutely be celebrated. This did benefit from some widely positive coverage as compared to what Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic did. I think partially because of the charity component here, it
They're smart
it
to do that,
avoided a
absolutely.
little bit more of the criticism. But I think the criticism is still like similarly valid here.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
accepting like the St. Jude, the cancer survivor, going up there, it was still like some guy that is a CEO of some e-commerce company that went up into space. So, like,
that ran a contest, right? That literally ran a
exactly.
contest,
And
did a modern marketing campaign. The fact that I think the thing that left probably this most sour taste in our mouths was that there was media blackout after launch. Like, launch was covered, with Katie Coleman, with you had all these, like, yeah,
mhm,
they rolled out the astronauts, hired them to
great
do,
people.
like, the
Yeah.
great commentary. That was all great and educational and fun to watch, but we lost so much of what we had previously seen for government missions on ISS with the footage, with the photos, because that all been saved and is saved for a Netflix exclusive, which
Yeah,
if you're
that's
gonna,
what left me
yeah,
wanting. Like,
yeah,
whereas the Dragon mission with like the astronauts on board felt completely different because
yeah.
that's like public money. We got to see like the entire trip. That I to me was more meaningful and memorable than this. Even though I'm not going to be totally cynical about it. There's still something awesome about all of this stuff. But
And my
I just think it like the general positive coverage probably is a little too positive given what happened.
and you're right, there's a disconnect. In many ways, it is just another flavor of the Blue Origin and Virgin Galactic launch, and the launches to come from those companies as they enter part of their business being private space flight and space tourism. Right, the egalitarian aspect is not quite there, uh, but at the same time, did you see the clip of them looking through the cupola for the first time and opening the hatch, and their jaw dropping, and that pure
So
joy
those are
and sharing in that moment? That was
totally
amazing.
earnest. You know what took me out of it is right before that shot. I don't know how I missed this earlier, but one of the crew members, they all have like code names, and
Mhm.
one of the crew members like had the code name Hanks, and I found out like right before that cupola shot that that's what was the name, and I was like, come on, that's like two Apollo 13 of you to like call back Tom Hanks. I don't know
Right.
if it was for Tom Hanks or whatever, it probably was. I was just like, took me out of it a little bit. I will say it looks cool. Like for whatever you want to say, the shot of them in their suits in the in the ship itself just looks so damn cool. And I don't think we should minimize how important that is. Like, there's a design aesthetic here that we have never really had with NASA, to be honest.
Well, there's the Great Cupola in ISS, right? And we've seen some very awe-inspiring footage and photos from there. But so often, the astronauts are trained to be so not just professional, but so stoic, and you don't like there's joy, but it's a measured joy, right? They're operators on a mission with very specific tasks, and research. And yes, the crew of the Inspiration Ford also had tasks as well, but watching their jaw drops, it felt relatable, right? Their
Yeah.
overview experience of seeing humanity in front of them and Earth in front of them felt like, wow, this feels like, yes, even though a multi-billionaire or billionaire paid for it, it feels like something that people could accomplish if in our lifetime and in the next generation for sure. And that's why interest in booking these type of flights dramatically went up afterward, and everyone wants to get, everyone with the money wants to get up there.
Yeah, are you gonna watch the Netflix thing?
I,
I haven't watched
I,
the initial series, right?
no, I haven't seen it yet. I mean, we'll put it on. We'll put it on. I mean, Netflix has I personally don't think it'll do well for Netflix. I think Netflix
No.
does a terrible job marketing even the big budget movies they have. Someone said, what did they say? Like Netflix, like they're like they ring your doorbell, leave a movie, and then run away, right? Like they don't really make a big event out of these things. So, yeah, I'm glad Elon Musk put 50 million toward the charity, right? And I hope they reach that $200 million goal. Friend of Tested, Ryan Nagata was part of the Inspiration for festivities and designed gear, jackets that were flown on the mission, and that's just incredible.
That's
And
cool.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
happy for
So
Ryan.
yeah, yeah, and I'm happy for the crew, for them to come back safely, and for them to share that experience, becoming new ambassadors, not only for St. Jude but also for this era of space flight. So, great job, everyone involved, and we'll hopefully have more, to witness of this era going forward. We'll move on to pop culture. A bunch of things I want to talk about. First of all, Star Wars Visions drop. We're not talking about What If. I still haven't seen the episode, but Star
I'm
Wars
like 3
Visions.
episodes behind.
I
What
know.
I mean, what if?
So there are 9 episodes here, but they are more bite size, ranging from like 12 minutes to 22 minutes. I've only seen 3 of them. These dropped
I saw the
yesterday.
fir I saw the first 2. I no spoilers,
No
but
spoilers.
holy crap, that first episode
The
is
duel,
so
right?
spectacular. It just drops you into an art aesthetic that we've never seen, in, any Star Wars stuff, comic book or otherwise. Obviously there's the entire samurai aesthetic that it infuses many of the episodes that we're going to see here, really prevalent in this, a callback to Star Wars's origins, and they use it to incredible effect. It is probably some of my, like, I think it's easy to say that was my favorite 15 minutes of Star Wars in the last, like, 10, 15 years. That was awesome.
It's so funny how well this is received compared to how, in terms of the fandom, compared to how some fans treat, the sequel trilogy and have strong opinions there, and yet not as strong opinions here with some of the, liberties in the storytelling. And I don't know if it's a difference between live action and animation, or what's considered inspired by the Star Wars universe versus what's supposed to be canon. But honestly, I enjoyed the first 3, what I've seen so far, more than the first couple episodes of The Mandalorian. Like, in terms
I
of bold
agree.
storytelling and taking the flavor of Star Wars and some of that familiarity, yes, there are lots of callback. In every episode so far, someone says punch it, right? There are lightsabers, but like the speed of the storytelling, the freshness of that fusion, even though it is like you say, going back to the roots of the spaghetti western inspired Kurosawa, Japanese samurai stories inspired Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey, Star Wars. It's all remix, right? But the animation style is so fresh, um, and so unbound, right? Unfettered. Like they're allowed to do these bold things with, and you saw the second episode, right? The way just tonally with
Completely
a,
different.
a
Yeah.
rock band in Star Wars. It was so
I
cool.
It's so derivative of so much anime, but I don't mind that. Like, I'm not looking at this as anything but homage to those art forms. I will say, okay, with all due respect to that scene where the Mandalorian takes off his helmet and looks at Baby Yoda, which is a spectacular few minutes. Uh, I think the what this really did well was call back to the original Star Wars movies in the sense that there were like, especially the duel, there's stuff that is just not explained at all. There's like all these loose threads everywhere. You have no idea what's going on. It's very reminiscent of the kind of all over the place storytelling that was in episode 4, where there are just like people would show up, like arms would get chopped off, and you'd be like, what is what is going on? And they just move on, and I loved it. It was more about a mood than anything else, and I can't wait. I'm gonna binge the heck out of this series, and I'm just trying to control myself so I can pace myself through it.
Yeah, yeah. There was a Twitter thread of someone asking, about the Star Wars comics, the Star Wars novelizations, and what's considered canon. Are the novelizations of the films considered canon? And Pablo Hidalgo at Lucasfilm, who is kind of like the overseer of all things of story, said that his interpretation is these are all kind of like stories, tales from a galaxy, far, far away, that even the films are just interpretations. It's as if you're hearing the stories. They're all through the lens of hearing these stories, because it's all prefaced with this all happened a long time ago, and there is no like objective truth, quote unquote, to even what you see in the live action stuff.
I I couldn't be more tired of the conversation of what's canon and not canon. It is so pointless at this point. I don't need to see more about these characters. Maybe if there's something that emerges that people want to do another short about, great. I don't need this to go anywhere except within the contained stories that they're telling right now. So like someone lock Pablo Hidalgo in a vault so we don't have to know if it's canon or not, so we just don't have to engage in the conversation. I'm just enjoying the spit out of this because this feels the most fresh Star Wars has felt since our youth.
And I think interestingly fresh in a way, not necessarily in that they have to divorce themselves from the tropes, from the iconography that we've seen in the films, whether it's lightsabers, droids, Tatooine, Boba Fett. These things all show up in these shows, but because of the way the stories are told, the tone, that's what's fresh, not just the picking a different corner of the outer rim and of the galaxy, the Star Wars universe, to tell that story.
Yeah.
And maybe they're using it as a test bed to find out which stories of these 9 resonate most with the fans, and then they can dive deeper, just like they may be doing with the What If series.
Yeah.
Um,
Hopefully not. Hopefully they just tell
yeah,
stories
yeah,
and
they
move
can
on.
also, yeah.
I
Um,
will say I've only watched 2 of these, so, like, don't let my enthusiasm, convince you to watch all 9 with these eager eyes. I haven't seen, 7 episodes in this series, and so it may fall off a cliff. That has happened to us before in Star Wars.
well, I'm ready to jump off a cliff because this next story, Nintendo had Nintendo Direct, and speaking of fresh takes on on iconic characters, we're getting a Mario movie, an animated Mario movie, so not live action, but the voice cast was announced, and I think this goes you've probably heard out there. You've listening to the podcast. It's Chris Pratt playing Mario. It's Anna Taylor Joy playing Princess Peach. But it begs the question of why a Mario movie at all? And is it even worth doing a Mario movie? Period. Because Mario as a character is a caricature, is a stereotype. Why?
Let let me pitch you a better movie, a better Mario animated movie in 10 seconds. Okay. Norm, picture Cannonball Run, except it's Mario Kart. And it's
Yes.
Mario Kart the movie. And it's just a long race to the finish, animated, and all the tropes from Mario Kart appear. Done. The music soundtrack for that would be amazing. This is so unnecessary. Nintendo does not have a good track record when it comes to this franchise being adapted in any way, shape, or form. With all due respect to Captain Lou Albano, who is the best live action Mario of all time, which is not saying much. This is completely unnecessary, but it's also a little weird, which is a very Nintendo thing to do.
Yeah, I like your idea though. Around the world map in 80 lives, right?
D-
That's what I want. Just a crazy adventure through all the different worlds of Mario, by Mario by cart or by airship, right? Yeah, coming out in 2022, plenty of time for them to switch gears. You know, the famously, of course, the Sonic film, which ended up being okay, but part of it, even with live action casting, being the Jim Carrey fully leaning into crazy persona, but that they retooled that film, at least the animation, the look of Sonic, that film based on feedback. So who knows what they'll do based on this feedback? But a Mario movie is coming out. There's money to be made for the studios here. Is it? What is this? Universal? Is that right? Is this is It
I don't
is
remember.
who is it producing this? Illumination. Yes. So it's going to be it's so funny. You're going from Illumination, which is Universal, right? And their most successful franchise, Minions. Minions are basically Ubisoft's Rabbids reskinned, and the Rabbids already exist in the Mario's universe with Mario X Rabbids. So tonally, I think we know exactly how this is gonna play out. Speaking of big money to be made and movie franchises and big story in Hollywood, Netflix picked up the rights, just the rights, for all of Roald Dahl's stories, including the Willy Wonka story. I don't know if this includes that musical prequel that they're working on with Timothy Chalamet. But BFG, Matilda, they're already working on, Netflix is working on the Matilda musical inspired film for $100 million just for the rights. And they think there's stories to be told, both long form, short form, TV show format. And this is eating up a big part of my youth, at least my youth.
Yeah,
Do
I
your
mean, I
kids not
watched
read
all
Roald
those
Dahl?
things. No, absolutely. And yeah, not I'm not interested at all. Netflix is going to place this at my door and run away, as you said earlier, and I'm probably not going to watch this. I think my Wonka enthusiasm was sapped away by Johnny Depp. BFG is a really, I think, underappreciated movie. If you for the one from what was about 10 years ago, maybe something like that. Um, but I feel like I've seen 3 versions of Matilda. I just think this is just overtread area. Um, and Roald Dahl, like, like the stories have the similar beats to them. So I'm not saying they can't charm the heck out of this and produce some great stuff. It's just I I want new stuff. I'm tired of watching the same stories over and over and over again. Maybe I'm just over the nostalgia bit that has been the last few years, but uh I don't know. Like living in the pandemic has felt like Groundhog Day. I don't need the same stuff anymore.
Yeah.
Okay,
I,
I
I
am now start. I'm close to being on a Jeremy rant here.
well, nostalgia. The member berries are still they still yield much fruit, and many dollars and many profits. Speaking of which, Disney Plus has Disney Plus Day coming up, November what? November 12th. So that's the day Shang-Chi will drop on Disney Plus. It's not going premiere access, but it will be, I think, paid VOD on iTunes and other places in a couple weeks, 40 after the 45-day release window. And that's also also dropping on that day. There's a trailer for
Jungle
the
Cruise is available that day. A I didn't even know this was happening. A a reimagining of Home Alone called Home Sweet Home Alone.
mm-mm,
No
mm-mm, no
thanks.
thank, no thanks,
No
no
thank you.
thanks. Nope, nope, nope,
Um
nope.
there's an Olaf short that's coming out, which I think is going to be a hit with a lot of people. Season 2,
Series
the
of
first few.
shorts.
Yeah, oh, a series, that's right. There's a the first few episodes of Jeff Goldblum's season 2 of The World According to Jeff Goldblum is dropping. There's a Pixar short, Ciao Alberto, coming out. A new Simpson short is coming out. Um, and a couple things about the kind of behind the scenes kind of, docu celebrations of MCU and of Boba Fett. Oh, and then this Michael Keaton show that I don't really know much about.
Yeah, yeah. It's a weird launch of stuff. I mean, people are probably still all going to be waiting for the Hawkeye show, which is not coming out till later that month, I believe. And actually, I didn't get a chance to hear your thoughts on the show when the trailer dropped last week.
I freaking love it. I love it. I'm overboard for it. Okay. So, first of all, you have to know I love the source material for this show. I think it's some of the best Marvel source material in terms of comics of the last, I don't know, decade plus. This is from Matt Fraction's comic Hawkeye, which tonally and artistically look very different. And there's so many nods that we saw in the trailer that speak to that. You're going to hear the word bro a million times, and it's going to be charming and endearing. The dog is the greatest character in the MCU. You've heard it here first. I also like that it is taking a character in Hawkeye, which doesn't have a lot of like depth and angles to it, and really building off this like singular scene in Endgame about his Ronin turn and using it to
Yeah,
great effect,
yeah,
to tell a wider story here. But it's still contained. And I'm a sucker for holiday stuff, and Disney does that well. So sign me up, man.
yeah, yeah. There's a little bit of a Shane Black vibe being a Christmas series. I said Home Alone 2, that kind of vibe. If you want to go back to Home Alone, shenanigans abound. My fear for it, and part of it's in the trailer, is not tonally, but that it may get overcrowded. They need this series to build the relationship with Hawkeye and presumably new Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, and her donning the Ronin outfit in the trailer, which is an interesting way to have their encounter. You saw a glimpse of Echo, the character,
Hmm.
right? So that's a fan favorite Marvel character that if they're debuting here, I hope it'll feel a little bit like the Photon introduction in WandaVision, in that they're setting her up for greatness and her own thing, but that could get lost in the mix. Plus, we're also expecting, spoiler alert, character from the Black Widow film.
The thing that I still sticks out to me is if you look at the release dates for Hawkeye, it's running for a few episodes, and then Spider-Man comes out in the middle of
Oh,
Hawkeye's run. And then Hawkeye finishes, and it makes me suspicious, very suspicious, that there is going to be stuff that there's consequences of from the Spider-Man movie that might show up in the Hawkeye show. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a little galaxy brain here about all of this, but I was just I I thought they would have it like sequence somehow. And maybe have Hawkeye wrap up before Spider-Man comes out. I
I,
mean, they're in New
I,
York, right?
yeah, it is. I think it was originally set to come out earlier, but it is Christmas time, so I mean, Marvel knows about all its release schedule, and maybe they're going to write something in to tie it in. to bolster get more people. I mean, Spider-Man's only in theaters also, so if you have momentum from the Hawkeye show and there's a must-see tie-in for already highly anticipated, hugely anticipated Spider-Man film, that can only raise the floor for both of those series. Hey everyone, Norm here. Before we continue, I want to let you know that this week's episode of This Is Only a Test is made possible with support from itpro.tv. Start or grow your IT career with online IT training from itpro.tv. Did the recent ransomware attack on the gas pipeline catch your attention? It's another example of how cybersecurity professionals are in demand. There are more than 500,000 open cybersecurity roles, and you can become a cybersec pro with online training. It's never too late to start a career in IT or move up the ladder, and itpro.tv has you covered. From CompTIA and Cisco to EC Council and Microsoft, itpro.tv has nearly 6,000 hours of on-demand training and engaging hosts who present information in a talk show format. They're live every day, and shows go studio to web in 24 hours. Courses are conveniently listed by category, certification, and job role, and stream itpro.tv courses live and on demand worldwide via Roku, Apple TV, PC, or their iOS and Android apps. Learn IT, pass your certs, and get a great job with itpro.tv. Visit itpro.tv/test to save 30% off all plans. That's itpro.tv/test. Once again, itpro.tv/test. Now back to the show. All right, let's move on. That's a little bit of tech because a bunch of stuff did happen. We're not going to talk about iPhones just yet, but Microsoft had their big annual Surface event. They relaunched their more budget entry level Surface Pro line, which has been their kind of big bread and butter line. Went through a big revamp and took a lot of design cues from the Surface X. That was their ARM based Surface, a little thinner, bigger screen. It looks a lot like the Surface X, but this is still Intel based x86, and it's their biggest redesign since the Surface Pro 3. So, and it has 120 hertz display, a new keyboard, new pen, and it performs a lot like the past Surface in terms of relative to the generation of Intel chips, then it could be a really good buy for students who want to use a touchscreen interface on their laptops. But the big surprise was the Surface Laptop Studio, which is a hybrid product of two now defunct, it seems, Surface lines. One, the Surface Book, which I always was interested in. I always liked using. That was the one with the hard hinge that separated, and you can flip it over to have a little bit of an angled drawing surface, a little more powerful, beefy uh, laptop, as well as the Surface Studio, which is a such a disappointing product in that it was such a beautifully designed all-in-one with an amazing like canvas
Mhm.
screen that you could draw on, and it was running on like old laptop hardware and rarely updated, also extremely expensive. And you take those two ideas, and now you have this Surface Laptop Studio, the design of which I also think is super cool. Folds like a laptop, much thicker than your standard laptop, has actually some like hidden depth to it. And it folds into kind of like all in one form factor where it's more screen and this drawable canvas than an exposed keyboard.
I love the all-in-one look in the context of God, that would be where it comes off the hinge. Super useful on like planes and in travel mode. Uh, and then it operates like a laptop. But this is like full on super high end laptop because it's what like $1,600 as a
To
base.
start, right? And it
Yeah,
can go
to
up to
start.
3,000, and but it doesn't even go use Intel's like 8 core processors. So it's really like it's competing with Apple in terms of the target market, and the competitive advantage here is touchscreen, and people who would otherwise be buying both a MacBook Pro plus an iPad for drawing. But at the same time, they're not going to be able to compete on battery life and efficiency because they're still on Intel's 10 nanometer chips.
Mhm. How How much do you like the fact that they're releasing these on the same day Windows 11 comes out? Like Microsoft has never done that in the past, right? They usually release Windows and its own thing and they keep the hardware away from it. They're like very much taking a page out of Apple's book. Like, let's
Yeah,
release the new operating system and have hardware to accompany it. I actually think this is pretty brilliant of them.
I think it's smart for
Overdue.
them. It is overdue. I think it's aspirationally they're hoping for that Apple momentum where the launch of the OS becomes a huge thing, but there are no there are so many Windows users, but the percentage of Windows users who are hardcore Windows fans is much smaller than the percentage of Mac OS users who are hardcore OS 10 fans who look forward to these big updates. I don't
So
see people excited about Windows
100%.
11.
100%, but anytime a new version of Windows comes out, there's gonna be articles about it. A ton of articles about it. It's a big deal, even if there isn't a hardcore base that's like, "Yes, Windows 11," and especially this time around, given that we've heard about Windows 11 so far. But, uh, like, the fact that they're finally taking advantage of that natural marketing window to be like, "Oh, yeah, here's some hardware that goes along with it." It just makes sense, and, uh, I wonder if, like, they've been doing this for a while and this is the first time I'm noticing it, but this feels different to me, this time around, and I think it's gonna bleed over because the Surface tends to not get much of a splash in terms of its coverage, so this could maybe elevate it just a little bit.
In many ways, because the Surface Pro line hasn't been radically redesigned since the Model 3, since 4 generations ago, they just kind of do your annual processor update and minor updates here and there, different touch covers, different type covers. Uh, it becomes like if you're a Windows fan or you just like you're more comfortable in Windows as an operating system, that's the one to get if you need a new laptop drawing, tablet equivalent for work or for school. Uh, I think overall, and this I think includes Apple because of the pandemic and because of the world we live in today, there just isn't a lot of excitement or energy around either the new iPhone products or Microsoft products. I don't think we're like I don't think people are hungry for that type of that type of marketing and consumerism in the same way people have been in the past. But yeah, I want to try out that Surface Laptop Studio. I want it to be a thing they continue supporting. I want Intel to get off their asses and really embrace their roadmap to really compete in x86. And I want Windows 11 to be stable and the articles about Windows 11 to be less to be more be about the cool things Windows 11 is doing and Microsoft is doing, and less about, ooh, here are the ways that Windows 11 may break your Windows experience. Because that's what usually happens with these OS
Yeah,
launches.
we'll see. I mean, we're gonna get both, right?
Yeah, yeah. But it is, as you're listening to this, the release of the new iPhones. Jeremy did not get one this year. It seems to be kind of an S year in the past year's parlance in terms of just kind of minor feature
Eh,
updates. The big thing is battery life and camera, according to the reviews. Massive battery life improvement because of new nanometer process for the A15 chip and good cameras across the board. So there's no zero compromise year in terms of difference between the Pro and the Pro Max, and better low light photography. Great, always
Can
needed.
Can we talk about that for a second? So, like, all the reviews are like, okay, yes, the battery life is off the charts, and that's super important and somewhat expected based off of what we saw last year with the 12. But I saw a bunch of those reviews that are like, here's what the 12 image looks like, and here's what the 13, and you can see a difference, especially in the low light.
If
But
you
I was
pixel
like,
peep,
this is so marginal. It takes incredible photos. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, and there's so many great photos, but the improvement is marginal compared to the level of enthusiasm in the reviews of how good the camera is. It's a great camera, but it's like if you're going from 12 to 13, I'm not sure most people are going to notice that
they're
step
not.
up.
I don't notice between 11 and 12. The biggest difference for a pro quote unquote, a highly engaged like user is less the quality of the photo right off the camera, and if it's going to be shared, especially on social media and places that crop
Mhm.
and compress and add filters to these images, but more on the back end, like the Pro Raw feature from last year. That has been something that I've really embraced and
Yeah.
love, and hopefully the Pro Res feature on this generation is something that I will embrace and love in terms of the video. Things like the cinema mode, right? The fake bokeh portrait mode for video that's
Which
locked at
hasn't been
1080
well
30
reviewed. Yeah.
FPS. Yeah, I mean, I watched the music video that someone shot with that, and yeah, it's kind of like portrait mode. It's a little more pleasing, but in the same way that your Zoom background is fake bokeh, it's just like that. It gives you the sense of fanciness and the sense of an extra pinky in the air for your videos. I actually think that video is over bokeh'd anyway these days, and there's a lot to be said about nice, flat, crisp, clear video, especially at 4K. If you're talking about the type of videos that people are watching at home, travel videos or family videos, I want to see the detail. I don't want the background necessarily to be blurred. I want to see, where I am in the world. So yeah, I'm less excited about that cinema feature, and that's one I think we'll be using much less.
What'd you think of what are they calling it? The macro photography, like where the lens was like auto switch when you get close. I don't think it's actually supposed to do that way, but I've seen a number of like really close up photos that look incredible with it.
So macro photography is nothing new. This is another
Hmm.
kind of catch-up feature, right? Like
Hmm.
the OnePlus phones have had macro photography forever, and most phones with multiple lenses these days, the ultra wide angle, the wide angle, have a macro mode, and that just kind of using the elements to figure out which narrowing the minimum focus distance. The macro mode on the new iPhones this year really makes up for inadequacy in their ultra wide, which was fixed focus, no autofocus, things that you want to get close to the camera end up looking really blurry. And so the ultra wide in the pro cameras or the pro phones this year for iPhone are the ones that have the macro. And you're right, there's a software, not necessarily a bug, but a, a software quirk where when you want to get close to a subject, it'll automatically switch from the wide angle to the ultra wide, and that changes up the framing, even though you can do a
Hmm.
wide angle. And so I think Apple has come out to say that they're gonna have an iOS 15 update where you'll be able to toggle that as a feature on and off, and same for video as well. But overall, I mean, this every year, I think last week we talked about diminishing returns. It's diminishing returns not just in the phones, but also in the reviews. Right, I'm reading the same reviews year after year, the same opinions. Either someone's going to be not interested in iOS, or someone's going to be not interested, or someone's going to say, just like Apple says, best phone ever, best iPhone ever. That's what that's right. Like, so often I read a review and I know the reviews are trying to serve multiple purposes. They're serving multiple audiences, right?
Hmm.
There's a reader of a review that wants positive reinforcement. They want the cognitive dissonance. They just want to be told they've made the right decision on picking the phone. Now, there is definitely a reader, a category of audience for these reviews where they're making a decision, but choosing between maybe an honest decision between an Android phone and an iPhone because of a feature like battery life or because of a feature
Hmm.
like a camera. And I think that's probably the most useful if you're writing for that audience member. That's the most useful type of review. And then there's the review for like the person who's going to get an iPhone no matter what and wants to know they jumped into the pool at the right time in the right part of the moment of the upgrade cycle where they're trying to make sure that if they're only getting a phone every 2 or 3 or 4 years, that they're not getting the tail end of that upgrade cycle, or they want to make sure that it's going to last. And that's a harder thing to justify. And I think if you're reading it from that perspective, all you're reading is best phone ever, best iPhone yet, best camera yet, big longest battery life so far.
I don't want to be cynical about the battery life because there's actually pretty significant gains there. Like doesn't matter to like an everyday use because you're still getting like a full day of use on it. No, but it has better performance on battery life when you're shooting 4K video, which is like not a small thing, and has better performance on battery life when you're playing games, like things people do. So I'm not going to be cynical about that. I, it is incremental if you're going from a double digit number to a double digit number series iPhone. It just is. And so there's no way to write fresh reviews without just acknowledging that. If I was somebody that was going from like an 8 or 9 to the 13, there is a massive difference in what
Right.
you're getting hardware wise. Other than that, it's just talking about iOS 15, which is still pretty marginal differences, but like important ones because they don't just affect the 13 users, they affect everybody.
Yeah, and at the same time, if you're going back to, if you're someone going from upgrading from a 7 or 8, you know what? The iPhone 11, iPhone 12, pretty good phones, pretty big upgrades already, and you'll probably be super happy with those, and they'll probably be much cheaper too.
I mean, I just like a couple months ago upgraded my wife from an 8 to a 12, and she's
Yeah,
like, "Should I wait for the 13?" I was like, "No." Like, okay, like it's not going to make a difference. Like
yeah,
you won't be able to tell the difference, but you will be able to tell the difference from your 8 to 12 in a really big way.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, if you want to talk about what's coming down the line for Apple, one thing that might have to come down the line, and this is going to be really interesting how Apple handles this, is the integration of USB-C on iPhones. And iPhone 13, of course, still sticks with Lightning, even though the iPads have moved to USB-C on the Pro line, and the Mini line, I believe, as well. But the EU and the European Commission is enacting legislation that will force within the next 4 years all phone mobile device manufacturers to, one, have USB C, and two, allow for interchangeable a power standard, so high speed charging power
Mm.
standard, so you don't have to buy a charger from one company to get the most benefit out of USB C charging on your phone, and that will have to include, if they want to sell iPhones over in the EU, Apple.
So they make a big deal of this is cutting down waste, cutting down charger waste, which is like kind of a thing Apple was already trying to do by like stopping shipping earbuds and like charging things and whatnot. Let me pose this to you. Any chance Apple is like, yeah, we're not going to ship a power port on this anymore. You have to charge wirelessly.
That would be the most dick move Apple thing to do.
Think about it though.
Wow,
It
I didn't.
could be, right?
Wow, I was more in the camp of like Apple was already planning to be, 3 years on the line. They're already going to embrace USB C, and so this is a moot point. But MagSafe being a thing for charging, being a magnetic wireless charging being a thing they launched and embraced last year, and iCloud being how they're really managing all of their file transfers. So brave, unbelievably brave.
Like so I want to qualify this. There's no way. There's no way you could do that, right? But I said that about the microphone jack going away a couple years ago and here we are. So I I just think like it's we're entering a area where it's not unreasonable to consider this that how brave of an idea that would be.
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? You may be saving from like the chargers going into the waste, but in terms of power and efficiency, wireless is so inefficient, right?
Totally.
I look at did you see the news? IKEA has a new product, and I fully admit, I was fully on board with the idea of Apple making some type of charging pad and charging table, and doesn't look like they're going to anytime soon. But IKEA has a $40 charging pad that you mount under your wood table. I'm not going to try to pronounce the name of this device. It's spelled SJOMARKE with like umlauts
How many
up,
umlauts are there in
like
this? Like
there
at
are
least 4?
two, yeah, yeah, there are 4 dots at least. There are 4 dots, but it uses the Qi standard, But when you're talking about mounting something underneath, what, 3/4 inches or 7/8 of an inch? Wow. Maximum
I mean,
of wood or plastic.
it's not really going through wood. It's going through that particle board that they claim is
Sure.
wood.
That's true, that's true. No, yeah. Like a real workbench, it's not gonna work there. So particle board, you're getting that. This is the dream of Tesla, right? This is what Nikola Tesla wanted. Wireless charging across the room through your tables. So inefficient. What a waste of power.
So I am going to push back slightly as somebody who I have not plugged in of my phones. I have two phones. I have not plugged in either one in weeks because I use wireless charging exclusively at my house. I think I have 3 wireless chargers around the house. One on, like, my nightstand, one on top of my desk, and one in, like, the living room, and they're all basically stands that I just set my phone down and it charges, and, yeah, it's not fast, but the thing is, like, I take my phone out of my pocket and set it down there, like, when I'm working, and so it has the benefit of just more time. Uh, I I think this is gonna be normalized. Like, we saw Starbucks has these kinds of wireless chargers. By the way, don't charge your phone on those, like, Starbucks wireless chargers. There's so many, like, exploits that can happen
Oh,
when you,
really?
do that kinda stuff. But uh, it's not, yes, distance, like, there's a physics thing here. It's like the greater the distance, the less efficient the charger is, but there's been so many forms of wireless chargers embedded in desks for a while now that, you can get enough through there that, a couple hours of wireless charging, you're gonna get good throughput. So,
5
I'm not
watts.
yeah, it's fine. Like, most of my wireless chargers are just like 10-watt ones, and it takes like 2 hours to charge up on a 10-watt charger. Uh, I actually think this is going to become more normalized. So, look, am I buying a racing to IKEA for this? No, but
Uh, why not just put it on top of the table? If you wanna embed it in the
no,
table,
because
you
it's
could route
cleaner.
route it on the top of the table. Sell a table with something built in
No,
on the top, not underneath.
I'm gonna fight you on this one. It's so much more elegant when it's embedded in the table.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
I watch way too much YouTube woodworking channels. Like, let us not talk about my YouTube history right now, but like 1 out of every 5 is a desk build with an embedded wireless charger in it. It is a
Mm,
thing people are
mm.
doing.
Well,
It's aesthetically pleasing. The reason I don't like the embedded ones is, unless you put some like registration in your design, it's hard to hit the spot exactly. And then there's a lot of design where you do that. Like, you could, put like bow ties in your tabletop to kind of, signify where it is, and still have a very elegant design. I don't think these IKEA ones do. I don't think they have markers because you're just placing it wherever.
yeah, that's why Apple uses magnets. Magnets. All right. Well, that does it for this week. I think Jeremy might be back next week. We'll have some more impressions on the new
Yeah.
iPhones, I guess.
W
Then,
We also have to have a 3D printer talk because,
yeah.
Norm convinced me to get the Mars 2 Pro, that I've been playing around with, and it's been a very enjoyable experience, and I'm still just kind of, like, tinkering with the workflow. I didn't realize how much of a mental, walk it was gonna be going from PLA to resin, in terms
It,
of just the workflow.
it is a different animal completely. It requires accessories, consumables, gloves, clean workspace, diligence. It's lab work, right? It's You have to think of it more like lab work
Yeah.
than a toy.
Especially since, like, the reason the handling of the resin is so, complicated is because you can develop allergies to it. It's not that
Mm,
it's, like, terribly toxic, is that it's just that repeated skin contact can, in some people, induce some allergies. So it's not that it's nasty stuff, unto itself, but there's sensitivities that have emerged in people. So that's why, like, the workflow is so important, is because you don't want to develop that, because then it basically just kills your entire system if you, start developing allergies to it. It's an interesting process. I will say, I it is so much more satisfying to have a resin print. Is really satisfying.
Yeah, yeah. I've printed some of this stuff recently, and you may see it on the site as soon as later today. There's a 3D printing video that some of the best stuff I printed so far on a new printer, and a lot of fun using the resin lapse cable that Uncle Jesse makes to capture the time lapses
Yeah.
with that.
Well,
So stay tuned for that.
one quick plug, if you haven't somehow watched the video of Adam going through Grant Imahara's workshop on the site, just do yourself a favor and watch it. It's really great. It's really really great because it's both like emotional, but it's also that I've always loved when Adam goes into somebody else's workspace. Like that part of his head activates in a way that I find really interesting.
Yeah.
So I just encourage everyone to watch that one.
Yeah, yeah, fun day. It's a Fun Davis's facility at Funco, and yeah, it's heavy stuff. And both those guys, knew and loved Grant, so like it was a big moment for them to do that. And there will be more from that visit as well. So stay tuned on the channel, as well as One Day Builds coming up as we ramp up to New York Comic Con. We are going to New York Comic Con. That's confirmed. I'll be there. The team will be there. So if you're going as well, let us know. Reach out, and we'll see what we can do in terms of meetups, events, or just waving from a safe distance.
I can't wait to
Uh,
see the cosplay that emerges from that. Some of the
oh my
stuff on
gosh! Yeah,
Adam's Instagram and Twitter of the stuff from like the fan expos in Dallas and Salt Lake have been so insane.
yeah, yeah.
I can't wait to see what New York has in store.
Did you see John Carmack tweeted out today? He was at Dallas Fan
No.
Expo, and he got like someone handed him some custom made like Doom tchotchkes, but he was looking for Adam so they could talk about Beat Saber handles. Yeah, he tweeted he was looking for Adam. He's like, "Ooh, I can connect these dots. I can connect these dots." So we're gonna try to reach out and make something happen. But
Oh,
yeah.
amazing. Amazing. I think Jeremy's going to be interested in that. Any sort of John Carmack related content.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Kishore, for jumping on the podcast with me. And thank you all out there for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Hi there, I didn't see you.
I would love to be able to play Racket NX at a VR arcade.
That sounds stupid.
With wireless.
That sounds dumb.
What?
Yeah, I'm afraid that sounds dumb, Kishore.
Tested.